Hello everyone, my name is Nathan, and welcome to another speedpaint video. If you couldn't guess already from the title, I'm going to be creating a bit of Stolitz art this time. I am unapologetically a huge fan of Helluva Boss, and I felt like making some fan art was a great way to celebrate the drop of Season 2, Episode 1. Now if you haven't watched Helluva Boss yet, what the heck are you waiting for? It's really good and absolutely worth your time. Plus you can binge the entire series in 2 hours, so you really have no excuse. And if you don't watch it, nothing I'm going to talk about in this video is going to make any sense. Plus, spoilers. Speaking of spoilers, if you are familiar with Helluva Boss but haven't seen the newest episode yet, you should go and watch that now before continuing with this video, because I'm going to be spoiling some major plot beats for that episode. Why? Because I'm going to be ranting about why Stolitz and Blitz is so great, because A, I really want to talk about Helluva Boss, and B, it's super freaking good, so yeah. And get ready, because I'll be discussing a lot of serious stuff, including abuse. So if that triggers you, I'd recommend proceeding with caution. Got it? Cool. Let's get started. Now the first thing about Blitz and Stolitz's relationship that I want to draw your attention to is how very different the two of them are. Seriously, Stolitz is a rich and powerful demon with big responsibilities, while Blitz is a lowly imp, short on cash, who had no responsibility if it bit him in the ass. This makes them perfect character foils, drawing attention to each of their unique qualities by contrasting with each other. And this contrast is further exemplified in the dynamics of their relationship. There's this very clear disconnect between how Blitz views their relationship and how Stolitz views their relationship. This is most obvious in the pilot and episode 1 when Stolitz is just horny and Blitz only plays along so that he can use his grimoire. But then you get to episode 2, Lululand, and suddenly this dynamic is made a lot more complicated. Blitz isn't just some douchebag who's willing to do whatever it takes to get paid, he's an incredibly insecure and socially isolated individual that is desperately trying to fill the void in his heart with personal achievements and a copious amount of violence. Stolitz is no longer some creep with a libido that is just way too high, seriously dude, chill out. He's a closet gay desperately trying to escape from his toxic straight marriage. Goddamn, Helluva Boss, I thought this was a show about demons in hell. That's the thing, though. The world building of the show also uses contrast to draw attention to specific elements. The setting of hell appears to be a silly caricature designed to get a good laugh, but on closer inspection is actually a fundamental deconstruction of the very idea of good and evil. This is supposed to be a place of evil, where people go to be tortured for all of eternity. But in the show, hell is just a normal place. It has businesses, workers, money, a legal system, a barely functional government, different regions with their own unique cultures and economies. Heck, they even have therapists. It may be a place overrun with anarchy overseen by an authoritarian elitist state, but that's no more evil than some real-life countries are today. And although we haven't seen much of heaven so far, from what little we have seen, it is definitely not all sunshine and rainbows. Hell isn't pure evil, and heaven isn't pure good. Both are flawed and have both positive and negative qualities. Good and evil are fuzzy, subjective terms used to describe things in relation to each other, and not innate qualities of a place or person. There are no good characters in Helluva Boss. Again, they are literal demons living in literal hell, but there's also no evil characters either. They may have deep insecurities, horrible character flaws, or psychopathic tendencies, but they are still people. They're demons, yes, but they're also human. And the setting that they inhabit, despite being completely outlandish in both concept and appearance, is nothing more than a reflection of these flaws that are fundamentally human. The entire show is nothing more than a hyper-exaggerated version of our own reality. The show wouldn't be able to make such a poignant message if it wasn't absolutely dripping with biblical imagery. The personification of black and white morality, and the representation of mankind's tendency to both vilify and sanctify things as if they have some intrinsic nature. We know intuitively that these things are not true, and yet we still fall victim to them. Stolitz and Blitz's dynamic reflects this idea. Both of them believe a lie about their relationship. Stolitz thinks it is committed and loving, which it definitely isn't, and Blitz treats it like it doesn't exist, even though it most certainly does. Stolitz sees it as a good thing, Blitz sees it as a bad thing. And both of them are wrong. I don't think anyone would blame them for making these assumptions. Their perspectives on the topic are perfectly understandable, relatable even, but they are disconnected, which creates contrast between the characters and each other, and even within themselves. To me, this leads nicely to the second, and arguably most important reason why the relationship between Stolitz and Blitz is so good, the way that it approaches character building. See, it's very easy in fiction to make characters that are simply heroes or villains, to ascribe a character a moral compass without giving it an origin or driving force. But of course, that's not how people work in real life, like at all. Real people have motivations for what they do, often very understandable ones, and they rarely make such decisions in a vacuum. They have family, friends, and colleagues just like the rest of us, never mind the culture of the society in which they live. People may be flawed or driven by selfishness at times, but we are all flawed and selfish in our own ways. That's part of what makes us human, and Stolitz and Blitz exemplified this idea to a T. I mean, I just talked about how going into episode 2 was like getting personality whiplash for the two characters, but nothing about it feels unbelievable or contrived. Quite the opposite. As someone in the comments pointed out, the emotional high point of the episode, when Stolitz is talking with Octavia in the maze, is literally a gay dad being unable to come out to his daughter, and I'm kind of angry that I had to have someone point that out to me, because I am someone who has a gay parent who's gone through a similar experience, and words cannot describe to you how hard that scene hits because of how real it feels. Then you have Blitz, who uses comedy and violence to deflect attention from his insecurities, both of which just so happen to be incredibly common coping mechanisms that I myself have used from time to time. Looking at these characters is like looking at a broken mirror, an imperfect reflection of ourselves, but yet still more accurate than other people's descriptions. And this trend of brutally real characterization continues later on in the show as well. In episode 5, the Harvest Moon Festival, Blitz has the option to let Stolitz die with zero repercussions, and join another elite imp on a crusade against rich assholes that think they're better than them. Something that, based on everything we know about Blitz, should have been exactly what he wanted. But yet he turns him down. Not only does he turn him down, it's revealed he was playing Striker the whole time and had no interest in his proposition in the first place. Which means that not only is being badass and killing people just to prove a point not what really matters to Blitz, he does actually care about Stolitz, even if only a little bit. It's just that he's so insecure about it that he acts like it isn't true. He is in denial. Meanwhile, Stolitz spends the entire episode doting on Blitz, trying to make him feel special and lift his spirits, ignoring the fact that drawing attention to their relationship clearly makes Blitz uncomfortable. Stolitz is blissfully unaware of how his actions affect Blitz, or anyone else for that matter. He lives in his own little world and sees everything through rose-tinted glasses. In episode 6, Truth Seekers, near the end of the Truth Serum dream sequence, Moxie accuses Blitz of being afraid to love people, of being totally unable to understand intimacy or desire. He pushes away everyone in his life, especially those who are closest to him, because he is afraid of their rejection. It's a classic case of, I can't be disappointed if I never cared. And just like in real life, this doesn't work. No amount of pretending can make the insecurity go away, and by treating those around him with coldness or malice, he only hurts them and drives them away, leaving himself ever more lonely and isolated. Blitz is stuck in a destructive cycle of self-hatred, and it takes Truth Gas beating him up the head with his own insecurities to even acknowledge it. Thankfully, by the end of the sequence, Moxie has helped Blitz to realize that he doesn't have to fight that cycle alone. They can do it together. All of this culminates at the end of the episode when Stolitz shows up to rescue them. In a fantastic and subtle bit of characterization, the two of them switch roles during this scene. Seriously, think about it. Stolitz, who is normally the unconditionally supportive one, calls Blitz his plaything and berates him for getting caught specifically because it could get him in trouble, while Blitz, who is normally the deflecting asshole in the relationship, actually apologizes to Stolitz for his actions. He even goes out of his way to deepen his connection with Stolitz, the only way that he knows how, by offering to fuck him. And then there's frickin' episode 7, whose central plot revolves around Blitz fixating on Millie and Moxie because he is jealous of their relationship. He never says this explicitly, but it's pretty clear that's why he spies on them. And it gets to the point where Stolitz, someone who he is already kind of in a relationship with, is sitting right there while he watches them. And Stolitz appears visibly uncomfortable with this situation, implying that he feels like he's on the spot, and that maybe Blitz doesn't really like him. Which hits even harder because we, as the audience, know that that's at least half true. Blitz doesn't really want to be in a relationship with Stolitz, it's just not because he doesn't like him. Then, both of them do get put on the spot, which, as has already been established in this episode, God, this is such good writing, makes Stolitz uncomfortable, meaning that this entire situation is basically his worst fear being realized. a situation that occurs entirely because Blitz chooses to stick his neck out in order to defend Moxie, something that would have been completely unthinkable at the start of the series, but feels like a natural culmination of the character growth he went through in the previous episode. And then it gets even better, because Stolitz stands up as if he's going to defend Blitz, but doesn't say anything because he's afraid of drawing attention to himself. Again, Blitz is the brave one in this relationship, while Stolitz is the coward. But of course, because this episode hasn't hit hard enough already, he gets called out anyways. Now, everyone knows that he's in an affair with an imp, and the crushing reality of his situation is laid bare. He has a kid, and a wife, and a job, and he can't just leave all of that to be with Blitz. And then the gut punch of not just Stolitz realizing this, but Blitz realizing this as well, and ugh, it's so good! And once all of this is over, the characters respond exactly as you'd expect. Stolitz, still not ready to let go of his fantasy despite now knowing that it's just that, a fantasy, reaches out to comfort Blitz, who rejects it because of how much he sees that his actions have affected Stolitz. He cares about him so much that he'd rather end the relationship than make things worse. He legitimately believes that Stolitz would be better off without him. All of that internalized self-hatred returning in full force to make him feel completely unworthy of Stolitz's love. Just perfection. But it's when we get to the newest episode that my third and final point comes into play. See, Season 2, Episode 1 is all about Stolitz and Blitz's past. In it, we learn more about their upbringing and how we got to the inciting incident in the pilot with Blitz stealing the grimoire, but the part that jumped out to me about the episode is how much it focused on the abuse that both characters have suffered. And the more I thought about it, the more I started to realize that their entire relationship arc is about abuse. Blitz harbors deep emotional trauma from his childhood because people mocked him for his mistakes or simply being himself. This is why he routinely does things that are irrational, reckless, and self-destructive. He is desperately trying to prove them wrong, to show that he is actually competent. Charming and manipulating Stolitz is just another way that this manifests, showing that he can do and say whatever he wants and get away with it because no one can stop him. It makes him feel powerful, in control, like he is capable of things. It isn't until he becomes attached enough to Stolitz to care, and he comes to terms with the fact that his actions have consequences, does he realize how toxic that mentality is. His decisions have hurt others, and acting out won't help because the problem runs much deeper than that. Stolitz, on the other hand, had a shitty father who blatantly used emotional manipulation to control his behavior and put him into an arranged marriage despite him clearly not wanting it. His wife, that he didn't ask for, then proceeds to treat him like absolute shit, something he tolerates because he believes that the problem is himself. I also want to point out here that Stolitz takes all of this in stride, while Stella's the one that becomes consumed by rage and jealousy, just putting that out there. Anyways, he is forced to endure this treatment for so long he begins to internalize that hatred. He starts to believe that it is his destiny to be nothing but a pathetic washout who will never find true joy or happiness. So when Blitz shows up and starts telling him exactly what he wants to hear, even if it isn't true, he suddenly feels liberated. Someone who seems so free and unapologetically themselves that wants Stolitz to act out. Someone who has never truly felt in control of his own life. It's only when he is reminded of his responsibilities and the effect that Blitz could have on them that he comes crashing back to reality. He can't run off with Blitz. That would involve disgracing his family and potentially hurting his daughter, the two things that he cares about the most. And when you think about it, Helluva Boss as a whole is a story about abuse. Not a cartoonish caricature of abuse, but actual, real-life, honest-to-goodness, you wouldn't even know something was wrong unless you were looking for it kind of abuse. Sure, the characters and their actions are purposefully exaggerated for comedic effect, but their motivations and intentions are exactly the same as real-life abusers and abusees. And because the abuse is exaggerated and comedic, it purposefully draws attention to it. Even someone who has never experienced or witnessed abuse can recognize it simply because it's so blatant and obvious. And the reality of the situation is treated with such seriousness that it comes across as anything but insincere. The way that it is depicted does not insult or dismiss those involved in abuse, nor does it resort to simple stereotypes or assumptions. The show does its fucking research, and as a result, it simultaneously makes those who have suffered abuse feel seen and understood, while teaching those who have not what it looks and feels like. But the show, and especially the newest episode, goes one step further by showing how abuse can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It shows how the two most abusive characters in the entire show are themselves victims of abuse. This is again very true to real life. People who abuse others are very often those who have suffered abuse themselves. The act of manipulating others becomes a way for them to cope with the trauma and insecurity their own abuse created, a way to dull the pain or gain some semblance of control over their own life. Not even necessarily on purpose, but simply because that's what feels familiar to them. They have been conditioned to see abuse as being normal, expected even. It has become just another element of how the world works, how people work, and that trap of hurting others to make ourselves feel better can be incredibly hard to escape. But you can escape it. And I think that process, the journey to end a cycle of abuse, is exactly what Stolitz is all about. A relationship that was introduced as the embodiment of toxicity and manipulation. Literally the bottom of the barrel. A relationship featuring two deeply flawed characters who continue to suffer from the long-term effects of years of abuse, individuals who have themselves, whether they intended to or not, abused many people, including each other. It should be the epitome of an unhealthy and unfixable relationship. And yet it happened. Not only did it happen, but it became something to them. They care about it. We care about it. But that forces us to ask some important questions, like, do they deserve love? Do they get a second chance? Is it too late for them to change? Are they even capable of becoming better people? And there is a part of us, a part conditioned by our society and culture, that tells us that the answer to these questions is probably no. They are terrible people. They don't deserve to be loved or given second chances. They have already demonstrated an unwillingness to change. They will never get better. But anybody who has watched the show, I think, would disagree. Because deep down, I don't think we actually believe those things. We all do bad things. We are all the villains of someone else's story, if only for a moment. But we also feel like we deserve things like love and second chances. We all want to believe that we can change and become a better person if we try, that it is never too late. To deny these things of others wouldn't just be hypocritical, it would go against our very humanity. Even if someone, for some reason, didn't want these things, if we cared about them, we would want them to believe it. If one of your parents or siblings or friends thought they were not deserving of love, would you not tell them that they were wrong? We will never live in a world without abuse. We cannot escape from it, no matter how hard we try. But we can't ignore it either. Abuse happens all of the time to all kinds of people in all kinds of circumstances, yet so often we choose to deliberately ignore its existence, walking through life as if everything is fine, even though we know that it isn't. Stolitz and Helluva Boss as a whole serves as a much-needed wake-up call. It not only forces us to acknowledge the prevalence and mundanity of abuse and to contemplate the serious and long-term effects that it can have on people, but also that it can be overcome. It shows us how we can help ourselves and others to move past abuse so that we can all live better, happier, more fulfilling lives. And I think that's a pretty big achievement for a pair of horny demons. If I'm being honest, I'm kind of disappointed with this artwork. Like, I feel like I could have done better if I had tried harder. The line art and shading is just so simple and boring. I had no idea what I was doing with the overlays and background, and I ended up messing with the text so much that I continued working on it long after I stopped recording. Look, I know what you're thinking. Nathan, it's not that bad. You're just being hard on yourself. And you know what? You're right. I am being too hard on myself. It's just something I've internalized after years of hiding who I am. Something that is so old and deep-rooted that I literally could not tell you when it started or why. All that I know is that I feel perpetually inadequate because I expect myself to act like a normal person when I'm anything but normal. I'm a goddamn autistic, non-binary asexual with social anxiety. I am the antithesis of normal. And one of the many ways I cope with that inadequacy is by looking for external validation through my art. I try so fucking hard to make things perfect in a desperate attempt to feel better. So yeah, I am being hard on myself, but I'm also being honest. And I'm not just sitting here wallowing in self-pity either. I've been taking steps to fight this kind of toxic negativity. It involves a lot of mantras like, try your hardest and have low expectations, or what if this artwork didn't have to be my best, but ultimately it's just a shift in perspective, not attaching my self-worth as a person to my ability to make art, or anything else for that matter, not looking to others to determine whether or not the things I do are valuable. Unfortunately, this is something I still need to practice, like a lot. So let's talk about what you think about my artwork. Does it do these characters justice? What do you think of the Stolitz ship? Does it even count as a ship, since it's basically canon at this point? And have you seen any other good examples of abuse representation in media? Feel free to let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, you can also give it a like and subscribe for more overly in-depth discussions about art, creativity, and society. If that sounds like something you don't want to miss, you can hit the bell icon and select all from the drop-down list to be notified whenever I upload a new video. My current schedule involves posting once a month, so you can expect a slow but steady stream of content in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!